My name is Joe and this is my Ideas and Concepts Sketchbook evaluation. So to start off with the sketchbook, we were first all working on our work skills where we had to be put in a group and come up with a way in which we could raise money for a charity of our choice. The charity that we chose was Water Aid, so the first thing I did was I started creating a mind map of all the different ways I could raise money. After doing that, I then moved on to the design process where I started coming up with different ideas in which I can sell different products. After completing the design process, I then developed my designs into one final concept. Moving on from that, I then started to produce this main concept onto a canvas, which will then go on to be sold. I'm really happy with how the final piece turned out because I think it looks really good and gets across the message that I wanted. The next task that we moved on after the work skills was this doodle task where we were given a bunch of random shapes which we had to draw the first thing that came to mind. After drawing these doodles, there was one particular doodle that was selected which will go on to be developed into a piece. The piece that was chosen for me was the snake drawing, which I then developed by making it more defined and adding colour and detail into it. After completing that task, we then moved on to the next task, which is where we would get wires and draw different designs which we could create with those wires. The designs that we created would then go on to be developed by combining two or more of the original designs together. Once we did that, we would try and come up with a pattern in which we could develop. The pattern I came up with was very abstract and was the only one that I thought really worked. We then moved on to the mark making task where we would listen to a bunch of different sounds and we would have to create the first mark that came to mind when we heard this sound. After doing this, I then looked at an artist who creates her paintings by listening to music. Her style is very abstract and is very indulging, which I think makes her piece even cooler. Out of all the mark making pictures we created, one was then chosen to be developed further. Out of all the pieces I did, I would have never have chosen this piece for myself because I just didn't like it that much. However, whilst creating this, I had a lot of fun, and I think if I was able to complete it, it would have looked much better. We then moved on to the Rorschach test, where we would be given different pieces of paper and apply different blobs of ink to it to create these different patterns. After producing these Rorschach tests, we would then go around to others and ask them what they saw within them. I then wrote down the average of what people said. After completing that task, we then moved on to the ABCs of drawing, where we were given a bunch of post-it notes and we would go through the alphabet and have to draw something related to that letter. For example, C would be cross-hatching. We would also have a object with us and sometimes the thing that we'll be drawing would be related to the object that we would have. After doing this, we then looked at an artist who produces a bunch of illustrations onto post-it notes, and his style is very dark and unique. We then moved on to cave paintings, where we would look at a bunch of different paintings which we would use as reference and example, and we were then given a task to produce a drawing that represents family. After doing that, I decided to look at a bunch of different cave paintings independently and discuss them. As homework, we were told to look at the Turner Prize and what it was, and who we thought should win it. I chose Helen Martin because I thought her work was very weird and unique, and I just thought it was really interesting. Another homework task we were given was to create a word association. Each classmate had a different word that they had to create association around. My word was autumn, which was handy because the next bit we went on to was creating a wall hanging that was evolved around autumn. Because I already created the word association, creating a mind map was pretty easy, and the designs I already had in mind. I created several designs, and from them I then moved on to produce a developed version. Whilst doing this, I also looked at the artist Andy Goldsworthy, because he creates a lot of sculptures where he uses natural resources. The final wall hang that I produced was fairly different to my designs because the first time I tried to create it kept breaking. However, I think that the final piece turned out really good and looks very rustic. We then moved on to our independent work, where we were given the theme cathedrals, and we had a choice between designing a sculpture, a piece of jewellery, or a piece of clothing. Before being given our theme, which was cathedrals, we were told to look at these different images and discuss them. Without knowing that they were evolved around cathedrals. All of these pieces were very abstract, and I thought they were very quirky. After given the theme cathedrals, I then decided that I wanted to create a sculpture evolved around it. So I created two different mind maps related to cathedrals and cathedral-like sculptures. In my spare time, I also created a Pinterest board that I produced and put everything that I thought was related to cathedrals, cathedrals architecture, different sculptures that I thought were really interesting, which I could use as references. One task within this cathedral independent work was we had to draw a range of different photos of cathedrals, but experimenting with different techniques. So for the first one, I did a continuous line, then a non-dominant hand, a blind contour, and a time drawing. I also looked at various artists who looked at cathedrals and developed different sculptures around it. After that, I started playing around with different designs and started getting comfortable with the different shapes that are incorporated into cathedrals, as well as looking at more artists who worked with sculptures. I then moved on to a design process where I started playing around with different mediums and different ideas that I had which I think could look good in a sculpture. After creating the designs, I then moved on to creating a final piece where I had a source of light in the middle which could be seen as sacred, which would then project a pattern onto anything surrounding it, which would be based around a stained glass design. After moving on to that, we moved on to our next project where we were looking at book sculptures. To start off with the book sculptures, we first started playing around with different patterns and ways in which we can fold paper. We also started creating a miniature book sculpture, which was a hedgehog. After doing that, I then started going to the design process where I was coming up with different ideas which I could create a book sculpture on. Our theme for the book sculpture was Roald Dahl, and we had to base our sculpture on one of his books. So I chose James and the Giant Peach. I then started creating the book by using cardboard and book paper to produce a final piece. I'm really happy with how the final piece of this book sculpture turned out, and I think that it represents what I wanted it to. That is all I have in my sketchbook. Thank you for watching.